I'm Margaret Ann Windsor, kidnapped in 41, born in 39, and brought to Moulton, Alabama. My identity stolen and given the name of a twin, Peggy Ann Dempsey. I married a Childers. I still have to use that name. Uh, Later I found out about my real ID. I was dropped off with this family. They didn't adopt me. I was given her identity. She was murdered, and so was Carl, the twin. Were both murdered. Their mother was born out of wedlock, and the grandma uh, swore the other children to secrecy about the murder of the twins and about me being put there and who I am, my real name. And by the way, I want to insert this here. I do remember after I found out in late '83 my real name and kidnapping who my father and mother are. I remember when they dropped me off at age 2. I had curly blonde hair, and it turned auburn later on. But it stayed blonde for a while. All the pictures of me, I wondered why, disappeared except school pictures when I was little, growing up. Most all of them did. Especially the one that I remember so vividly, where the two men that brought me, they had on suits almost like you see FBI. You used to see them wear. Two men were slender built, and they had hats on, if I remember correct. I know I do. And then they come back and did something horrible to me, but it was kind of corrected, okay? Uh, anyway, the Dempseys were furnished or promised money for keeping me. And of course, there was the threat if that Lina Dempsey could be held accountable in a gas chamber for killing her kids. Okay, they had a portrait, and I'm talking about a portrait, a real beautiful portrait, big, of my father. And I've put that up on The Real Monarchy and YouTube, I think, etc., Facebook. And my father was holding me, and I'd been christened. It was christening gown. I don't know how old I was, not very old. I was a baby, a month old or 2 months old, no more. Anyway, I found out my father's Edward VIII, and this whole thing's a lie about him marrying Wallace Simpson. And Wallace married a double in 37, and I've put this over and over as background because you wouldn't know what I'm speaking of. So some people by now may have just, if they flip it on, they flip it off. Anyway, she married an impostor, a double that was used to discredit my father. He did things like ride a tricycle in a diaper. He did antics and crimes that people thought was my dad, because your press was controlled way back then by the Rockefellers, Rothschilds, Bilderbergers, the Kennedys that kidnapped me, JFK. His father was appointed ambassador to England in 36 till they kicked him out in 46. Thus the Warren Commission, because it would lead back to me. And by the way, mind control was used in that one to program to shoot Kennedy. Also in the Martin Luther King. Now everybody raves about Martin Luther King and civil rights. I wrote a book, again I'm going to tell this about mind control, 76 till 80, April Fool Day of 80, when they put antifreeze in me. This is not the first time they tried. It's shocking that I lived, but it was hell for a long time. What I wanted to get to, though, was Martin Luther King was shot. That was a mind control. Andrew Young was with him. He became the U.S. ambassador to the UN, I believe was his title. Now, this man totally was a part of what happened to me. When he became mayor in I've forgotten, of Atlanta, I had been put on the street. The antifreeze, been illegally transported across the state line to Huntsville, Alabama, shoved in the car with this woman that murdered her twins that told me, I was told I had to call her mother. And when I was little, I had to have known. I told her, you're not my mother, and she beat me. over and over through the years, but mostly with, anyway. Oh, before I lose my train of thought here, I'm not putting all my picture of my father and George the Sixth illegal, my uncle with Roosevelt and Hyde Park, planning my kidnapping in 39, because a lot more has come to light about them and about who all really did continue with ransom was paid for me to keep me alive. And my mom and dad were still alive when I came to Roanoke in 86, okay? The double died in 72 and was buried at Frogmore. Now they could dig him up, but there's not a question of who I am. That's public knowledge. Everybody knows it now, but the press is controlled by the Rockefellers and Rothschilds. Now then, I'm going to try to get back to Andrew Young. I had started my book in Atlanta, and I worked for a cardiovascular doctor, and I'm not going to mention him again. In it all, he was probably the better, that group was. And I was doing the book, and they let me Xerox and all that, and they gave me a letter of recommendation when I left. I'd worked there a little over a year. So much was happening when I was trying to do the book, though. I left. I was living at Moonraker Apartments in Marietta, off Delk Road, Powers Ferry. It had been owned by Penthouse Magazine, the Mormon Church out of Utah. Genealogy, they owned it. Okay, Larry Flint was shot in Lawrenceville, Georgia. You get into patterns and crypt. Like I was taken to Lawrence County, Moulton, Alabama, and given the name of the twin. And Larry Lawrence Flint was shot in Lawrenceville, Georgia, March the 6th of 78. And Larry Lawrence McDonald, I wrote about in the book, MD A License to Kill. And he was a part of trying to kill me, along with Chelton, I'm naming him because I'm almost dead anyway, been there. Dr. Chelton, he's probably dead. Dr. Paul Beecham, who's still alive. Oh my God, he's 78, I believe. The horrors, just if they happen to have gotten video in West Paces Ferry Hospital. I went for a tox screen to see what had been put in me that night. And April Fool Day, I go in there, and it's been an April Fool that you could kidnap a monarch and take down my father. My father was married to Claudia Ruth O'Keefe, American school teacher, sister to artist Georgia O'Keefe. And I could go on now, but I want to get it back to, by the way, when they took me illegally in the condition I was in, one's for a tox screen, and it was hell. The tox screen was never done. They shoved me in a car, and I'm going to say this, Philip, I love you dearly. He was put there, and I don't believe for one moment he's the son of Lina Dempsey. He came there in 1944, and I loved him so much. I didn't want him to hurt, and I'm not trying to make any, but I loved him, and I took care of him. And so it hurt me, and I know the reason he probably couldn't help me. And I don't know. I've heard all these years, but all I know is he worked for the different agencies. They kind of had him, though. Let me put it that way. And when the antifreeze was put in me, they shoved me in a car. My ex-husband, I never had my apartment back or anything in Marietta. I was shoved in the car in that condition. They burned my brain. Most people die. That's a hell in itself. And he and his wife, Nancy, have shoved me in the car. Her car, Lina Dempsey's, and it was a nightmare. And finally, I'm going to skip here. I can't put it all up again. I skip here because, well, I will have to say it. She dumped me off that very night. It was just took me across the state line. I remember saying, "You're kidnapping me, you know." She dumped me off at Crestwood. It's a hospital, a regular hospital. I had no money, and I had been cut off from anybody. Everybody was afraid of it, or they just didn't care. So she said if I tried to run, well, it was night. It was about 9 or 10 at night. and she'd have the police lock me up. Well, believe me, she could have. This is a woman that killed her twins. She committed every illegal act in the book other than what she did to me. So I'll leave it there. A lot more happened with what she was allowed to do. And I'll say this, I passed a background check in the condition I was in by Sheriff Patterson, went to work mid-May for the District Attorney Fred Simpson, as in Wallace Simpson. They're getting cryptic here. It was supposed to marry the Duke of Windsor. My dad, and that was a lie. Anyway, background check was required to work for the district attorney's office. I did. That's when John Lennon was shot by Mark David Chapman, a program shooter. By the way, he lived here in Roanoke briefly. Really strange, all the coincidences that happened, supposedly. Anyway, back to Andrew Young. What happened with the deal with Martin Luther King, the Kennedys and the New World Order, who control everything now anyway, you press everything, they wanted everything British, and that included South Africa and everything that was South Africa and everything we had, and they took it. Well, Andrew Young was appointed ambassador by Jimmy Carter, I believe, and I believe Jimmy Carter is the best you're ever going to have. I think Sessions of Alabama, you might think I don't think he's honest because none of this has been prosecuted. I think he's the only one that would prosecute it and tell all this mess. I believe he's honest. I believe they'll get rid of him, but I believe he's honest. And I hope Trump is. But anyway, Andrew Young and Martin Luther King plotted, I'm going to go ahead and say it, with the Kennedys, JFK, it involved the mental health system, and this is what they've used in the programming, and like James Holmes of Aurora, Colorado, and Mark Kelly that married Congressman Gifford, the twin, Mark Kelly and Scott, who are astronauts. Remember Huntsville, Alabama? That shooting there in Tucson, Arizona, all of that mass shooting, by the way, you haven't heard of them any lately, have you? Or at least they're not telling it. They were done in patterns and programmed. So now then, before I forget where I was going here with it, and before this goes off, the video, Andrew Young, that's what they went after, and Martin Luther King. Remember civil rights? I have none, not even to say my name. Anyway, they partnered with the Kennedys, and they knew, well, Martin Luther King was killed later. Remember Selma, Alabama? Everybody talks about Alabama, and look at all you've done to me, America, and part of my own family. Sir Winston Churchill, and it gets involved with the Roosevelts, very much so, and his children, and then Dwight. Well, I said Dwight Eisenhower. You can go on. All the presidents have known. They're all part of the Freemason Illuminati. And it never stopped. It's a miracle, if you want to call it, that I'm alive. It's hell, and I don't know where my children are. I'm going to say this. I read an article, and I even videoed it. Well, not videoed it. It was a video, and in a news release out of Great Britain. It was talking about 1941, that's when they kidnapped me, about 3 of the royal family being placed in an asylum and put away, and the royal family didn't visit them, etc. Then a little bit later, some more of the royal family were put there. So the asylum. I want to tell you something. I was never mentally ill. I was misdiagnosed, not by chance, they meant to. Jew, Hyman Miller, 1962, you should see what that son of a did to me. And to Peggy Ferguson, if she hears this, she'll know. Her name was Peggy Ferguson. She asked me, she had gone to him. I went there simply, I thought I was a little depressed. I ended up getting shock therapy. That's torture. That's another word for torture. And the Jew, I'll say this. Berg was the anesthesiologist. Her and her husband were doctors, and they got a kick out of it all. This went on for quite a while. Then my husband was transferred to Atlanta. Then Dr. Victor Gonzalez, who was at Parkland in Dallas when John Kennedy was brought in 63 shot. John Kennedy helped in all that was done to me, the sorry sot, and helped in the mental health field that started this whole mess of programming and all that, or made it legalized it. If you go and like James Holmes, he's being treated for mental illness, and that's torture. It's misdiagnosis. It's using the mental health system as a war crime. So I'm going to leave it. You understand what I'm saying. And I'm going to quit because I'm not going to get this up. I wanted to say when everything failed and I was just literally kicked out in the street and back in Atlanta, and went to Andrew Young's office, the mayor, and they had all this gear. I'm not even going to say it, but he was too busy to talk to me, of course. They knew what had happened to me about the antifreeze. They knew who I am. They made their deals with the Kennedys and the Illuminati and all that, the global government. Now, when I was really just kicked out, in the condition I was in, I would work for the district attorney, passed a background check. It's what Lionel Dempsey did to shut me up in November of 81. Everybody should see. And remember, I'd passed a background check by this very Sheriff Patterson that became involved in what she did. She was trying to kill me. So I'm going to leave it there. I am going to say that when I had clothes and a job, working for the doctors, and I worked for the DA. Of course, at that time, I'd had the antifreeze put in me and everything taken from me, but I still had some decent clothes. I learned being kicked out the way I have been. I've been telling about the mass shootings. It's mind control. They go way back. They used it to knock off people that you'll never know about because it's invisible. The murders I speak of are done in patterns, and I had a letter from the FBI back June the 23rd of 79. And remember, I had the antifreeze put in me April Fool Day of 80. So, well, I don't have prepared text. I don't have a studio. I'm doing the best I can under the conditions. I'm just going to say when I was thrown out on the street then, I learned what people are like. As long as you have pretty clothes or halfway decent clothes, I'm a rag doll, really. Made a pauper. They don't care who I am. Elizabeth came through here when the Blacksburg, Virginia Tech shootings happened. That was mind control murder. April, I've forgotten now what year, 08 or 09. And all those were killed. Everybody knows this. Anyway, they don't care what you're telling them. Some of the kidnappings and murders that have happened, people were programmed, and you're putting the wrong people in prison. It's the agency doing it. But I've come to find out, I was put out here and I found out what people are like. Elizabeth, they don't care that her dad helped kidnap me, that she's part of the Illuminati. And I got a hold of some on Facebook, and this was real, it was Illuminati people on there posting to this one person, and they were talking about finishing off England. And they were talking about Elizabeth. They're all part of the Illuminati. And she had to be stopped. She was sending out assassins